everybody. Happy Friday. Welcome back to another episode of the Cyber Queens. And I feel like it's been a week. It's been a week cosmically. It's been a week temporally for everybody. So
Yes.
this is gonna be a super fun laid back episode. We are super excited. We're gonna cover a variety. We've been covering a variety of topics centered around getting hired and getting jobs. So we've deep dived into the job search cycle with some incredible guests, and your mentality and being in the layoff and things like that. And today we are focusing on the interview stage. So whether you have been laid off, whether you are just looking for your next gig, if you find yourself at the cyber interview, how do you be successful? I think there's an entire book around this. Actually, isn't there an entire cyber interview book? I'm pretty sure there is.
Yeah, I do think so. So definitely take a look out for that. But there's also, just tons of information out there about how you can put your best foot forward in interviews, questions to ask, so many different tips, tricks, and tactics. And so, of course, as we always do with you all, we're going to do our best to kind of give you a very clear tactical approach. Incorporating our own perspectives as practitioners, having gone through lots of interviews, and also, experience the good and the bad, just like many of you out there. I'm sure that there are some stories that you all can put in the chat, put in the comments, of things and interviews, situations that have gone south, which we'd love to hear about and comment on. So go ahead and go start filling in the comments.
I am a little afraid for the comments we're going to receive, because I guarantee you everyone has an interview horror story about some bananas thing they've heard or encountered in an interview. So
yeah, but in all seriousness, we've heard the stories. I've experienced it, and so the fact of the matter is, being in need of a job is not justification for employers to exploit you through an interview process. And so we really want to focus on today, being really clear about what's acceptable and what isn't, what you should be looking out for, and really the kind of strategy you can take for yourself to set yourself up for, ultimately putting your time and energy towards companies that are going to value you, companies that you're going to be able to stay at in the long run, and really not waste your time on the companies that aren't worth it.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like so many of us, when we're looking for jobs, we just have this general approach and mindset, we are ashamed of it. I'm so sorry, I'm the one who needs a job. And, you accept a lot of things and treatment from employers that you shouldn't, when in the interview, you should be showing up as your most audacious, bold self. You should be standing out, standing up for yourself. I get excited when I go into interviews. When I go into interviews, I go ooh, I can't wait to see how this is going to go. This is going to make me feel like I have all the power. I love a little power struggle. So I feel like more people should be taking their power back in the interviews. And that's what we're going to be going over today. And to start us out, since Stacey already brought this up for us, the red flags to look out for. So how in the interview can you suss those out, and how can you identify them? Stacey, very frankly, have you ever walked into an interview just feeling super optimistic and hopeful and this could be the job, but you left feeling like the ick?
Yeah. Oh gosh, tons of times. So many interviews where that has happened, unfortunately, despite a lot of companies putting a fair amount of rigor around their interview processes, right? And so it kind of goes both ways. On one hand, it can be great to have a standardized process of interviewing. We know that by standardizing the interview process, it leaves less wiggle room for biases to creep in there. On the other side of it, sometimes it can make it such a really impersonal experience, and to the point of where the people who are interviewing you aren't even trying to engage with you. They're not trying to get to know you. They're not trying to work with you. They don't really In a way, it almost feels like they don't even really care about whether you're successful or not. They're just kind of in a sterile manner, like asking you the questions and putting down whatever you say, right? But like, let's say you have like questions, or you're looking for clarification or on something or whatnot. Like, there have been times where like I've answered questions in a way that like I know are absolutely acceptable answers and strategies and whatnot, but because I didn't answer it a certain way, or because I didn't use like specific terminology, like we end up in a feedback loop of like just pedantic type challenges. And so it almost then starts to become a combative experience, where that you end up in this loop of them trying to get you, right? Like, if you're in an interview process and it's clear that the person on the other side is trying to assert their knowledge and their expertise of cybersecurity over you, like, imagine what it's gonna be like working for them.
Yeah, or worse, because usually a lot of companies will have you interview with aside departments or colleagues in other functions, not just yours, to see if you're kind of a good culture fit. And like, so they have nothing to do with cyber and don't know anything about like the cyber verticals. It's more like a ways of working interview. Again, they're just like, tell me about a time, blah, blah, blah. Okay, great. Tell me about a time, blah, blah, blah. They're not like, thank you for that answer. Like, oh, me too. I've been there too. Or I think that's a great strategy. They're just like, getting through it. And then you do ask a clear, this happened to me once. Someone asked me a very, very, very broad, ambiguous question. I was like, do you mean like with regards to this, or do you mean in my approach this way? Like, what are you looking for? Yeah. And she just stated the exact same question, exact same verbiage, and like gave me nothing. And I tried to answer it, and she was like, all right, but what about like an actual this? Like she was asking me for like a framework on my collaboration style. And I'm like, I don't really have a framework. I just kind of do it. Just reach out to people. So I was like, do you mean like, are you looking for the 3 C's of collaboration that don't exist? Like, I don't know. And she's, yeah, just like a framework. Like, how would you relate it to a framework? I'm like, and I was trying, and we weren't getting there. And I could tell she was getting frustrated because she just kept repeating the same tail end of the question. And I was like, can I know the question behind the question? Like, what is the skill or quality you're looking for? And can I give you a story that shows that? But I was about to like just give up. And I was like, I got to take this back somehow. If I don't drive this forward, we're going to be stuck here forever. But like, yeah. Is that also me, or is it them?
Yeah. I mean, I would say it's definitely their responsibility, right? So like, you are taking time out of your day, out of your schedule, out of other responsibilities that you possibly have, or interviews you could have been taking, but you've decided to dedicate some time to this company. And as such, it is a very reasonable expectation to, when you are interviewing, expect to have the person on the other side be able to, quite frankly, answer your questions, right? Like, quite frankly, just like work with you and treat it as an opportunity to, really get to understand you, as opposed to like it turning into the SATs and they're just looking for you to answer the question exactly as written, right?
I agree.
And so that lack of clarity, whether it's on specific questions that are being asked of you, or just when it's your turn to start asking questions, which we'll talk about in a little bit, about how like it's your turn to ask questions, from the start whenever you need to. But like if they're vague and they can't really give you specifics or an idea about like, whether it is the responsibilities of the role itself, or, what are some examples of how, women are promoted in this company? Like, can you give me a time when you helped someone, rise up the ranks or whatever? Like, if they can't answer these simple questions, like, which are baseline responsibilities of the employer, like they're trying to test to see if you can meet their requirements, but like this is also equally like they need to show that they can meet your requirements in being a decent employer. If they can't do that, like that's something to question.
Absolutely. I will do a lot of clarifying. So a big red flag for me specifically is I do a lot of clarifying around the expectations for the position and what success looks like. But I also ask about company trends. Like I'll be like, I noticed last year you had a big layoff. It was mostly your sales and like this department, but like, do you foresee tech being a piece of that? Do you foresee that impacting cyber departments anytime soon? In other words, am I likely to be laid off in the next 6 months if I take this job? I'll ask things like, do we have something set up already? Do we have expectations? Do you have like, am I inheriting anything, or is it like open playing field, just come in and build it however you want to build it? Because a lot of times in that scenario, I'm kind of seeming like, ooh, I'm anxious to get in there and build my own thing. And don't worry, I am. But also that kind of says they'll want you to do a whole lot of work from the ground up, giving you very little direction and expectation to go on. And most importantly, measurements of success to go on as well. So you have to determine what it's going to look like and what success looks like. And then if they don't like that, you're on the hook for that project 6 months down the line, which also sucks. So those are my red flags. And this is by no means an exhaustive list. Those were like 2 or 3. We could do a whole episode on red flags, and we don't have time for that. But if people want to hear about more red flags, we're happy to bring that one back. But moving on to a topic that I love, that I tell everyone to do. Everyone that I mentor, everyone who comes to me for advice, who's like, I'm going to be having an interview. How should I prep for this? My number one piece of advice is bring that big dick energy to your interviews. You better show up with that unshakable confidence that most of the gentlemen walking around have. Walk in like a cat, like you're God's gift to this position. You're going to solve all their problems. And guess what? Lucky day for you. I'll solve your problems for this much money. When do you want me to get started? Like, that's what I do. And they're like, yeah, Meryl, a lot of people can't do that. I'm like, why not though? Everybody should do this. So how do you prepare to bring your most confident self to your interviews?
Yeah, it's really changing your mindset about what an interview is. And so, the way we're kind of conditioned to think of interviews is, I go in there and they ask me questions and I hopefully answer them sufficiently enough so that they like me and they pick me and they choose me. And like, it's like heavily dependent on the other person and whether they like you and not the other way around. But the reality is that they need you. They need someone with your skills, your talent, your expertise to do something for them. And you also have choices. You have, plenty of other, companies that you could choose to work for, right? Now, whether or not you actively have them banging on your door today, like, don't worry about that. The reality is you're in demand. And like, approaching the interview with that mindset that you're in demand and you are exactly the person that they need for this job will change everything about how you show up. Because now when you're showing up, it's more from a almost more of like a sales perspective from your end. Absolutely. In that, you think about like when you're trying to sell something to someone, like you need to figure out like, what do they need? Why do they need it? What's working for them so far? What isn't working for them? And then how does my solution like enable them to get exactly what they want? So right out of the gate, like, if the interview starts out with the whole like, tell me about yourself, I'll be like, I would love to do that. Before I just launch into things and give like an overview, what I really want to do first and foremost is figure out exactly, what you're looking for this role, what's working, what isn't, so that I can tell you, my experience that will best complement and illustrate how, I'm a perfect fit for exactly what you need. Right. And so like when you can. So basically, when you show up with that BDE, you decide, like, whatever question they're asking, like, yeah, I'll acknowledge that question, but, like, we're going to get what I need out of this. And I'm going to, be responsible for how this plays out, almost more so than the person across the table from me.
Yeah. Another one I like to do is to take their question, answer that with my own question, and then answer my question so that I'm framing it in the way that I have one of 3 anecdotes I'm going to tell, and it kind of relates to your point. So I'm going to rephrase your question with the lens that I need and then launch into my story. For me, it's just like I said, I get excited at interviews. I like going into interviews. I like knowing like what projects people are working on and how relevant my skills are and how much I can teach them and show them and demonstrate for them. My dad had a specific story about this once. He works in a very niche area of ICS called SCADA. SCADA is an automation language that almost nobody understands. And he had someone come to him saying like, we are hemorrhaging money every day that we don't have someone on in this position on this project, like $60,000 a day that we can't deliver. And he was like, cool, I would like you to pay me, I think it was conservative, and this was like 8-10 years ago. He was like $180,000-$200,000. They're like, no. And he was like, you'll make that money back in a week and you won't give it to me. Like I could solve your problems. And he's like, no, absolutely not. So, you got to walk into it like that. You got to walk into it like, I can solve a problem that you've got, but I am not going to do it to like help you get the most you can out of me while paying me for like one function, but asking me to do like 4, which is why you got to really overqualify. So I do more interviewing back than people usually interview me.
And you can always set it up as a win-win situation, right? Like the reality is that like, they have a need, like, and if they aren't clear, if they're asking questions that are irrelevant, if they're not really structuring this interview in such a way where that you'll be able to actually get to the core of what they need and how you can solve for that, like, explain that to them. Let them know that like, hey, like I am really passionate about, what it is that you're trying to do here. I really want to understand your challenges and everything, and that if we can get clear and I can get clear specifically about what you're looking for, what you're asking for, that's gonna help me help you. That's gonna help me give you exactly what you need, and we can get started on this right away.
Yeah. I agree. Another thing is they want to see your excitement about the position. A lot of times they'll ask, like, what excites you about this? Why do you want to work here? Or why do you want to do this job function? They want to know if you know about the company and about the job. And so I like to ask back, what about me told you that I would be a good fit? What excites you about talking to me for this position? What about my experience made you go, ooh, we need to talk to her? Because that's going to be the leverage that I'm going to use for the rest of that conversation. But it also does help me help you. It helps me know the specific skill, like when the job description is 80 bullet points, but the actual job is like 3 core functions. So now I know your functions that you're looking for. I can tailor a lot of my answers to address those things. And they'll just walk away being like, and when you have that confidence and you speak like this and you get excited about what you're talking about and they can tell you're just in your wheelhouse, your confidence is contagious. They walk away feeling like, wow, she just knew what she was talking about. She taught us a few things. She's going to be powerful in this position, not like someone whose hand they necessarily have to hold.
Yeah, I mean, dare say, is it like, just think about in life, like, who are the people you want to be around? Are they the people who are, like, desperate to be in your circle? Or are they the people who, show up with such energy, enthusiasm, demonstrate that they, not only are supportive of you, but also have a unique lens or, talent to bring that could really like boost your circle, like that's who you want, right? And so the same thing goes whether it's in friendships or in employment, like the same thing. Like this is, as much as it's interview and technical and whatnot, interviewing is a social engineering experience.
Yes, it is, which is why I usually do well in these situations. All right. So you already brought this up. You brought up so we're going to move into the questions and answers. And that is our favorite interview questions to ask, but also our favorite interview questions to answer, like our favorite answers to give. And I'm going to start with the answers because you already touched on this. But the tell us about yourself question. One of the things that I realize people are not seizing enough is the tell us about yourself question. They give so I want to know, what answer do you hear to that question the most? And how would you reframe an answer to really seize that moment and seize that question in the interview?
Oh my goodness. So most people, when they approach this question of tell me about yourself, they figure out, well, how far do you want me to go back? Do you want me to go back to elementary school or college or like my
Or they're like, hi,
job?
I'm in my 30s. I have 2 kids. I love cats.
Yeah, or like give me some completely, or like tell me about that graphic design job you worked, when you were a teenager or something, right? Or the soda shop or whatever, right?
Hmm.
And I say all of that like, not to dismiss that those experiences, depending on what you're applying for. I don't know, maybe working in the soda shop might have some relevance. Same with me. Like when I talk about my experience as a visual information specialist, like I always tie that into how that enables me to communicate really complex situations and things that like cybersecurity is really intangible, so my skills in design really help with that. And it's a talent that you wouldn't get from other people, your standard textbook cybersecurity practitioners, right?
Hmm.
And so it's fine to touch on some of your like older employment history if it makes sense, but like really what we're looking for here is like demonstrate to me that you understand what this job is and what I need you to be able to do. And then in whatever order it is that makes sense from a storytelling perspective, whatever you need to include, but also most importantly, whatever you need to leave out, like please leave it out. And really stay focused on just sharing with me, the key things that make me, that can really like check the box of like, yeah, you have these skills for this aspect of the job. Yep, that shows you have these skills for that aspect of the job. Like,
Hmm.
and if you're not sure, again, like if the job description was vague, or like sometimes we end up in interviews where you didn't go through a formal process, right? Like you had the
Uh-huh.
opportunity to just go have a conversation with the hiring manager and you don't even have the job description in front of you, right? So
And then they
like,
send you an offer. You're like, really?
yeah, yeah, I know, right? It's happened.
How I got this job. Literally.
So like again, tell me about yourself. If you feel confident that you know what they're looking for and can craft your experience around that to really bolster that, great. If you don't though, do not be afraid to not answer that question. Like go ahead and make the turnaround like we talked about and put it back on them and find out more about like, well, I'd love to tell you about myself, and I want to make sure that we make the best use of our time, and I highlight really the things that will be the most beneficial for you to hear and know about me. So before I launch into that, could you just tell me a little bit more about XYZ? I have these questions about these kinds of things. Like,
Hmm.
I heard that, you want to accomplish this. What kind of systems and tools do you use? Because that way, if I use them in my background at some point, like I can tell you specifically how I use those very tools that you
Yeah.
use as part of your operations
Ask
to
about the tech
accomplish
stack.
these other things, right?
Yep. Yep.
So way better than going off on a tangent about how I ride my Peloton and, eat chocolate chip
Walk,
cookies on the
walk your
daily.
dog and stuff like that. Yeah, I agree. That is really, so when they ask that question, really what they're trying to get at is, what do you most value about yourself? What are your highlights about you and your personal opinion? So I am on the interview team for my company, my W-2 job at Acquia. And whenever I ask people, we're going to go around and do some introductions, tell you about ourselves, and then we'd like you to tell us about yourself. And actual responses I have gotten are like, yeah, I've, done this for like 15, 20 years. I know all about like this architecture and these frameworks. I run circles around this, and I've done that in the DoD space. And, that's pretty much me. And I'm like, okay, that gives me like nothing to ask back, nothing to like, can't have a conversation with you on that. But also I'm like, you didn't just get excited about yourself. Like you need to sell yourself to me a little bit.
Get excited, and
yeah.
That's all stuff I can read on your resume.
Yes.
Like don't regurgitate your resume.
No, the resume got you here. You need to stand up off the page. So what I like to do when people ask this question is I'm like, I'm so glad you asked. Let me tell you. So I came into cyber this many years ago. These are some of the positions I have, some of the places I've worked. These are my passions. These are my platforms. These are my capabilities. I'm super passionate about this. I actually helped write this. I frequently publish articles on these topics because these are super passionate. I'm really all about collaborative security and bringing in multiple teams and multiple verticals who wouldn't normally cross collaborate and seeing what kind of proactive measures can come out of this. And this is how I measure measure my performance, and these are changes that I've made. And I just like kind of give you like the fun part of the story, but I get really excited talking about my work, and I draw you in that way. And you're like, oh yeah, like you worked on that. Tell me about that. I'm like, oh, that was such a fun project. Let me tell you all about. So cloud native, you're cloud native, AWS or Azure? Okay, I'm better in AWS. So I'm going to say these in AWS terms, but let's go. And but you're the one instructing them. You're now taking that platform as a place for you to stand and speak on the things that you know. They want to hear about what you know, especially as it relates to the job that you might be doing. They don't want to hear, oh, like, I'm really passionate about line dancing and I go hiking on the weekends sometimes. And I live in Reno and I have 2 kids who I love, but also drive me crazy. What else do you want to know? Is that enough? Does that make me a person? Like, that's not what they care about.
Yeah. And I think that's counter to, so like, to be fair, I do feel like there was a period of time, or there is some guidance out there that does talk about like, oh, like we do want to get to know you as a person, right? And so I think that is nice and useful, and stuff like either, I don't know, maybe at the end of the interview, or more so just like have that be present in your social media, your LinkedIn or whatever, but maybe not bring it up in the interview, just because, especially for women, like the credibility factor is key. And the reality is that they're going to be looking for every little reason to disqualify you. And that's not fair. That's not right. But that's unfortunately the mindset that both men and women take towards, women when they're interviewing. Right. And so that first question of tell me about yourself is your chance to really like establish the credibility that like I am someone worth listening to because I have accomplished these things. Because unfortunately, when we go into interviews, we can't ride on the coattails of people assuming that we're competent. If we were, a tall, straight white male, like basically you just get, blanket belief that like you can do whatever it is you set out to do, right? But with women, there's that barrier there, that bias barrier that you're going to have to prove yourself to me first before I am going to consider you.
I agree. One of the things one of my first CISOs ever would say is don't make them hunt for it. So like you might be listing out things you've done in a job or your job duties, but what they're trying to answer when they're reading your resume is, can you do a function? And if they have to hunt for that answer, like take something you have done, draw out that skill, apply that skill to their need. Like you're making them work too hard. So the interview is all about giving them the information they need about you up front. Don't make them hunt for it. Tell them very clearly, if you need a cloud migration done and you need to upgrade all this firmware and you need this done, I've done it this time, this way, and for like on this with this budget and this many people. Like that's exactly what they want to know. So that's what you should be telling people with the tell me about yourself question. Yeah. Now in the reverse, what is one of your favorite questions to ask back, but not one that you've already covered?
Oh gosh, not one that I've already covered. I mean, one of my favorite ones, just on the like, is this a good culture fit side, is the one that I mentioned around just like, give me an example of how you have, a woman who's been promoted in your organization. Ooh. Like, what happened? What did it take? What did you do? How did you contribute? How did the company contribute? Just like details about that. Another question that I like is also asking about like people who are on the team that have since left. Like, what was the
turnover?
Yeah, what was the situation there? Because this can give you a glimpse about like, are people leaving because they're moving upward and onward to like better things, or are they kind of like avoiding this team, right? Are they moving along because they got what they needed, or they're moving along because they didn't get what they needed out of the opportunity? And a
great way to phrase that one is to say, is this a backfill? Am I backfilling someone, or is this a new position that was created because you have a new initiative or concern? And that will tell you like, oh, that guy left for like this reason, or like this person didn't work out because they didn't have this capability, and that'll give you some insight. Continue.
Yeah. But on the more like specific role side, a question that you could ask is, let's just say I got into this role, 90 days or 180 days from now or 6 months from now, how will we both know that this was the right hire? What will
Oh,
I have accomplished? And
damn.
if they can't articulate what they expect you to accomplish, at least in the next,
3
90,
months.
3 months, like whatever, like let's circle back to those red flags, because that is a red flag. Because
That's a
if
major
they don't even know like what they want you to accomplish,
Abort.
how can you make progress in your career?
Absolutely, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. That is such a great one. I can't believe I've never asked someone that before. I love something Stacey said though. I love how she said, if I was to get this position, whenever possible in the interview, I will always say, let's say I get the job, I'm working in the position, because you want them to start picturing you working in the position and working with you every day. And like, oh, that's so fun. If I get the job, like we'll have to like spin up a little happy hour meeting or a trivia meeting or something to like get people involved and stuff, and like picture how fun it would be working with me. But that is such a great strategy, because it does get them thinking about that. And I will always say something like, if I was working in this position and I needed this, I needed a new tool, or I advocate for this, or I can illustrate this as success, how likely is it that I'll get this off the ground? How likely is it that I'll get what I need? Or what does that approval process look like? And then they are out of interviewer mode and they're just talking about work processes, which is great too. They feel like they're having a conversation with a coworker instead of sitting in someone's interview, which is a great tactic.
Yeah.
Also.
How are you going to enable me to be successful in this role? What resources will I have access to?
Exactly. Yes. How much say do I have in what happens? Am I the buying decision? Am I an influence in the buying decision? Things like that. One of my favorite questions to ask, and Chris Ride said this, and I love that he said it because I actively have done this in interviews, is, they're kind of like, do you have any questions for me? I'm like, actually, I do. I want to know right now, are there any skills or capabilities or qualities that you're looking for this role that I have not demonstrated? Because if so,
Yep.
I would like to take the time to do that right now. And they're like, actually, yes, like we covered a lot, but we didn't actually, I don't have any notes on this, which is something we're looking for. And I'm like, perfect. I would love to I'd love to answer that for you. Thank you for asking. Great question. So I always very bluntly ask, if you had your ideal person in mind, have I not demonstrated anything you're looking for that would make me the ideal candidate? And they always say yes and tell you what it is. No one's ever been like, yeah, but I'm not going to tell you what it is. Like, you figure it out. Like, so that's another great tactic to take, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And also, if they, say that there isn't anything, that you've pretty much covered everything, but yet they still have, all these other, stages and projects or other things that they are now still requiring you to do in the interview process, that shows that they are indecisive. That shows that the reason why they're saying they don't think they need anything else from you, or that you've said everything, is because they don't know. Again, they don't know what they want or need from you. And so you're just going to end up, being the casualty. Your time's going to be the casualty, because while they continue to spin their wheels, searching out there for inspiration from the people whom they're interviewing to help them clarify what they need, right? Like, because they just don't know.
And that's a great insight. If you very clearly, like, once you get really clear on something, like who you're looking for in a partner, right? And then you start dating, you're like, you very clearly fall into this bucket or you don't. Mm-hmm. So if they have the job quantified, you very clearly have what they need or you don't. But if they're like, I think I got it all. No, yeah, I've got a lot of good notes. I'm going to go over them. Yeah, they have no idea what they need. They're asking the standard set of questions and hoping that answer will jump out at them, which is a horrid place to be in, by the way. So that's me as an interviewee, but me as an interviewer, one question I love to ask people is, if you had like $100,000 and no time limit, what would you build? What would you create, or what would you do? I just like to see, I think that's a great place for people to bring in personalities and show some of their passions, but while also demonstrating some of their skills and capabilities. So if you can, have an answer prep for that as well, because it always impresses people like me, because we want to see how creative you can get and not just how linear you can be with your thinking.
Yeah, hopefully in an ideal world, the types of questions that you get asked in your interview process are more, rooted in expectations for the role and like realistically, like what you would be doing on a day-to-day basis. If you're in an interview process and they're asking you, again, these gotcha quiz questions like, Did you really earn your CISSP type questions where they're just asking you random stuff about like
Like,
how,
what is session 04 on a
yeah,
Windows machine, which I missed once and will never miss again,
yeah, or
by the
like
way.
something about how high does the fence need to be or the water suppression, and like all of those kinds of like crazy things that are just have nothing to do with how you would work on a day-to-day basis, or don't give you an opportunity to show how you tackle problems. Like Meryl said, like if you have $100,000, like what would you do with it? Like if the questions aren't in like those veins, then like again, this is going to be this is signs of a company that doesn't value people. What
Yeah.
it values is hyper masculinity, like prove it or get out, being right, asserting dominance over each other. Like if you're picking up on that in the interview process, there's a high likelihood that that's exactly how it's going to play out once you're an employee there. And so like run away. Like,
Run.
and you are absolutely empowered to say you're done. Like if you have an interview and that it's something is off and something doesn't feel right, you can very politely after that interview and just go ahead and send them an email and say, thank you for your time. I've after these conversations, just, not aligned, looking for another opportunity, make the graceful exit. Right. And I know that sounds easier said than done, because the reality is so many of you out there are looking for jobs, are in need of jobs, need a paycheck to keep a roof over your head. But I promise you that by being strategic with your time and not wasting it on employers who do not deserve your talent, it's going to save you so much of that headache and that heartache in the future, because those same employers are going to do just as extreme things to you once you're in the workplace that are going to cost you far more than the absence of the paycheck that you are experiencing currently. And I'm
And
not just talking about money, I'm talking about your mental health too.
yeah, yeah, it took my wife like 4 full months to recover from the trauma from her last job. So that's a real thing. And Stacy moved us beautifully right into final takeaways, which is phenomenal. The last thing we wanted to address was really how to like take back the power around salary discussions, but we might do a whole episode reviving the salary discussion from last year. So we'll probably save that one for you all. That one's still coming. And if you have questions about that, pop them in the chats. But this has just been such a damn good discussion. I enjoyed this so much. I think we'll close it out. Stacy's done a nice little wrap up for us by me saying my last favorite strategy for taking back the power in your interview, because again, you are in need of a job, but you want to make sure you don't just take something that you're going to have to very quickly escape because it's not right for you. One of my favorite things to open with is always, I'm so excited to be here. I'm excited to learn more about your project and your work and your company. But I happen to be in the very fortunate position that I don't need a job. I'm not desperate for a new job. So I'm excited to learn more and see what you've got going on. But yeah, I don't need to take this. Now that's not power everybody has, unfortunately, but like Stacy said, it does behoove you to suss these things out and make sure that you're getting into an org where you can stay for a minute and bake and learn at least a new skill before you move on. And not everybody, sometimes we're in desperate positions out there, but do your very best to qualify, because how hard the interview is and to get information in the interview is how hard your job is going to be. And if you hate your job, it's something we do for a big portion of our day. It's going to trickle down to all the other areas of your life. I've lived it. So we've had some great comments and some great discussion in the commentary. Ray is over here, of course, saying she would talk all about her cats, which we frequently do. So I don't doubt that at all. and that she's going to recommend it to other people. We had someone drop a very nice example of an about me answer that they would give, speaking to their skills and talking nothing about their age, their kids, their gender, or their
Yep.
hobbies. So definitely go check that out. That was a great value add. Thank you so much for that. Otherwise, we just want to say thank you so much for listening and hanging out with us today. We hope you have a great weekend. If you loved the episode, share it with a friend and follow us on social media for more tips, tricks, strategies, and stories.
Thanks, everybody.
We'll see you next week. Bye. Except I don't have our outro music, because why would I have that ready? Because everything is delayed.